thank both of those two for having me lead off for the third year in a row. And I take that very seriously, and I'm very proud to be able to bat lead off. I wasn't exactly a speed demon as a youth, but now I gotta get my act together and remember what I wanted to say next. This presentation is an old one. I've been doing it since 2007. But if anyone is in this room today that was in Portsmouth, Virginia in 2007, I don't think you'll recognize it. It's a much different picture, thanks to people in the room, Seam Heads and Baseball Reference and the Sabre Negro League Committee and others. One point that I must begin with is the last victims of the segregation of baseball prior to 1947 are us, because we don't know with the same alacrity the Babe Ruths, the Ty Cobbs, the Germany Schaefers of the Negro League as we do the major league ball players. And this presentation, even for the most expert amongst us, will probably enlighten, shed some light, not enough. So the work that all of the people in this room do is extremely important to erase this victimhood of the general public on the Negro Leagues. Okay. Now we go where I was last year. Rap Dixon is born in Kingston, Georgia, September 15th, 1902. He's born to John and Rose Dixon. And Rose, of course, is a good one. And I want to point out Herbert, which is rap, Paul, and Tom Goodwin of recent vintage, who was in the major leagues for a 12, 13-year career in, I guess, the 90s and the aughts, are three Major League Baseball players that came out of the Dixon-Goodwin family. Now, this family, on both sides, there were two Dixon brothers and two Goodwin brothers, and another family, the Arps, that took part in this great migration, which 6.5 million African Americans left our southern states for greater opportunity in the North and the West. Those five families took root in Steelton, PA. And this rightmost arrow pretty much shows the route. They came from Kingston, Georgia, which is about 50 miles northwest of Atlanta, and they end up in Steelton, Pennsylvania. Now, one thing I want to point out, they crossed a very unique river called the Rappahannock. It's unique because it's a tidewater river. It's saltwater coming out of the Chesapeake Bay. And in so doing, according to historian Jim Riley, that's where Rap's nickname derives from. Now, I'm going to give you another version. This is the magnet that brought population to Steelton. The Bethlehem Steel Plant. This was one of the first big plants in the country, and it was the first to use the Bessemer process for making steel. This plant is located at the base of Adams Street, which is where Rap was raised from his teenage years moving forward. This home here, 137, still stands, and Rap could receive mail there from 1918 through his death in 1944. It's a lovely place to go. Now, moving up Adams Street, we come to the reason these five families picked Steelton instead of Youngstown, Ohio, or Gary, Indiana. Rap's uncle Oliver was chosen to pastor First Baptist Church, which still stands, you're looking at a picture of it, in Steelton, and he took over in early 1914. The Dixon family with Rap probably arrives 1 or 2 years later. Further up Adams Street still is the core of the Black community in Steelton, but even more so then. and at the top of the hill, there's a school called Hygienic School for Colored Youth. And you can see the principal, Charles Howard, right here, and his class of, I think it's 1916 or 1910. I have trouble with that lettering there. But Rapp graduates from this school in May of 1919 before going on to Steelton High School. The district at the time was not segregated. However, most African Americans did choose, either because of their geographic location or their love for Dr. Howard, to attend this school the whole way until the 60s. Okay, two stories before I leave the biographical section about Rapp's, I guess I should go back here, Rapp's extracurricular activities at Steelton High School. He played football, though not for the high school. He played baseball. Also, he was playing semi-pro ball since he turned 13 in 1916 on a team called the Keystone Giants. He also boxed in smokers. These were events that males gathered, took some adult beverages, and were entertained in various fashions. The one we can speak of here is boxing, and Rapp participated in those as a teenager. And finally, bringing him out of the athletic, but still in the skilled, I forget what I wanted to say here, but he played second trumpet in the Steelton High School combo. So now we'll get on to, well, one more story before we leave high school. This is according to Phil Dixon and Phil Hennigan from their wonderful photographic history of the Negro Leagues. Rapp's in science class, probably in 1922, when he realizes what the next lesson's going to be. They're going to dissect a cat. Up goes Rapp's hand, and he asked to use the lavatory. He left the building, went to the bank, took out his savings. He had been working in the steel mill, and took a train to the Negro League baseball world. According to the story, it's Atlantic City, but I can't find evidence of him there. It might have been just to Harrisburg, because that's the first team he plays with in the major Negro Leagues. But the rest of this talk is going to be devoted to what makes Rapp Dixon a Hall of Famer. And in my opinion, it's three things: statistics, legends, and opinions. First, the statistics. And this is for Kevin and Adam, just to understand that I'm going to rely almost exclusively on Seamhead's Negro League database from 1886 to 1948, with the Negro League's filter the only adjustment I'm going to be making. Okay, we're going to look at Rapp's statistics, though, through the eyes of a scout. And what better scout in 1925-26 than John McGraw, the second winningest manager in baseball, third winningest manager in baseball history, winningest manager in Major League history, and certainly a great assessor of baseball talent. Here's a headline from the February 1926 Harrisburg Telegraph. McGraw praises Herbert Dixon, star outfielder. And we can come back to any of this in Q&A, but I just want to quote McGraw from the article. Dixon is, without question, one of the greatest outfielders in the United States. Now, this is a man, and let's take a look. These are the 22 greatest outfielders, according to the Hall of Fame, in 1925. And I have the first line in my order, how I would rank them: Babe Ruth, Oscar Charleston, and Ty Cobb. The others are ranked in order of OPS. Not OPS 1925, but their career OPS. Okay. Now, McGraw he'd be looking at 5 tools, and we're going to look at each tool statistically. Could Rap hit? Could he hit with power? Could he run? Could he catch, and could he throw? Well, turns out there are 54 players in the Seamheads database, Negro League tab, that bat as often as Rap. Rap batted 2,548 plate appearances. Now, Rap's statistics that can be looked at for hitting ability, his OPS was 944, his OPS plus is 145, and his runs created per 27 outs, simple version, is 8.74. It turns out all 3 of those are better than all 40 of those 54 who are not in the Hall of Fame. Nobody who batted as often as Rap has higher numbers than Rap in those categories. The last column there, 8, 6, and 7, there are 14 Hall of Famers that batted as much as Rap, and Rap's better than an average of 7 of them in all 3 of those statistics. He's better than 8 in OPS, loses a little in OPS plus, and then he's better than 7 in runs created per 27. So I think he could hit with the best of them. Could he hit with power? Well, once again, we're looking at the same cast of characters, and you see all the 40s. Rap has a higher slugging, higher isolated power, hits more homers per plate appearance, more homers per game, more total bases per 162 games, and more extra base hits than 162 games than all 40 of the players that bat as often or more than him, and 8 or 9 of those 14 Hall of Famers. Could he run? This one's a little more difficult to measure. There is no 40-yard dash times in baseball, certainly not then, and I guess you could find that now. But I looked at 3 stats: stolen bases, triples, and runs. Some people adjust runs, taking away homers. I didn't want to further confuse things, and it doesn't change Rap's overall rank, because finishing 4th, 6th, and 2nd, there is nobody in the database among those 40 players that score better composite than Rap. He's the fastest, relying on those measures. I'm not sure if, I know there's better measures out there. I'm not privy. But he's also faster using those measures than all but 2 of the Hall of Famers, and they would be Oscar Charleston and Cool Papa Bell. Okay, that's the offensive skills. 2 more to go, and these are the separators. Could he field? There were over 800 outfielders that played 10 or more games in one of the 3 outfield positions, left, center, or right. And of them, well, let me not get ahead of myself. So there's 3 positions, left, center, and right, and there's 3 metrics. And as Kevin always lets me know, the data is incomplete. And this is true more so on the defensive side than the offensive side. The Seamheads database, marvelous as it is a project under development. It gets better every day, and that's a good thing. But with these incomplete data sets, it turns out there's only 1 outfielder of those 800 plus outfielders that's better than average in left, center, and right, and in each of those positions in fielding percentage, range factor, and runs saved by arm. So I'm not trying to say Rap was the best defensive outfielder in the Negro Leagues. I am saying he's one of the best, and he's the only one with better than average number in those 3 positions and those 3 metrics. And finally, could he throw? Runs saved by arm is an additive measure in left, center, and right. If you add Rap's, he's number 1. Arm and power are probably his 2 best tools. Now, One more look at the 23 now best outfielders of 1925. You'll notice I've now injected RAP right in the middle. 7 outfielders have a higher career OPS than RAP, and 17 of them are below RAP in OPS, the whole way down to Sam Rice. And I wouldn't be doing justice to the Negro Leagues if I didn't mention that 5 other outfielders, Branch Russell, Hurley McNair, Fats Jenkins, Vic Harris, and Wade Johnson, bat as often as RAP and have a higher OPS than Sam Rice. Now, that's not the way you pick a Hall of Famer. You don't pick on the Tommy McCarthy or the Chick Hafey or the Sam Rice or the Lloyd Wainer, but it is true there's only six Negro Leaguers in this 23-person field. 21 of the 27 best outfielders, according to the Hall of Fame, since Jackie crossed the line, have been players of color. The Hall of Fame needs to induct more Negro League players. All right. This is an easier one. Let me calm down. We're going to speed through this. These are RAP's legends. When I give this presentation, this is what I usually focus on, but I'm not today. This is kind of not the main topic of this presentation. From 1924 through 1927, RAP was in the greatest outfield in segregated baseball. It is the greatest according to the Hall of Fame, as this is the only outfield of any significant duration that has one of the dozen best players, outfielders in the Negro Leagues. In 1927, RAP goes to Japan, where he displays all 5 of his tools in magnificent fashion. He used to stand on home plate and toss balls over outfield fences. He ran the bases timed in 14.2 seconds, which is pretty darn fast, even today. He hit the longest home run in Koshien Stadium. The longest ball. It actually is a triple, but it hit the wall at a point that no one had ever reached, and they marked it, and it was marked until the stadium was either torn down or refurbished. Okay, one more thing about Japan, and this is an apocryphal story. However, both Jim Riley in his 1994 biographical encyclopedia and MLB.com in a 2007 article do describe Emperor Hirohito providing Rap Dixon with a Loving Cup trophy based on his play. And pictures do exist of the trophy in possession of the team. So what really happened, I don't know, but here's a picture to prove it. Okay, 1929, Rap cracks 14 consecutive hits. The Major League record is 12, and as you can see, there's the 3 guys with Rap that have had 12 or more hits in a row. The asterisk means the 14 is number 1. But the next 3 columns are of interest. Rap's pitchers that he faced, and thanks to Seamheads, we have a good eye towards the ability of all the pitchers that all 4 of these guys faced. And Dixon's pitchers had an ERA plus 113. That means, simply put, his pitching, the 14 straight hits, were against 14 pitchers that were 13% better than average. You'll notice Klings is next, and then Higgins and Dropo were slightly under average, very slightly. 3 of Dixon's hits come off Smokey Joe Williams. They're the only hits off a Hall of Famer among any of these 4, and 11 of the 14 pitchers Rap faced had a 100 or higher ERA plus. I should mention that during Rap's streak, he walked twice, so he reaches base 16 consecutive times. That's a modern, someone got 17 in the 1890s, but this is a modern Major League record, 16 consecutive safe reaches by hit, walk, hit by pitch. I think that's the only way to reach. And of course, the record that he set was tied by Teddy Ballgame. That's not bad company. But even then, Dixon's pitchers because now he faces Smokey Joe twice, so that raises his ERA plus to 116, while Williams's were 106. Williams did hit a home run off Whitey Ford during his streak, but Dixon faced 4 Hall of Famers, now facing Smokey Joe a 4th time. And just to give you an idea of how long that record has lasted, even though it's not official even today, and I'd love to hear comments on this, but it's only been since 2020 that the Negro Leagues have been deemed major. Most of the people in this room know they were major since their inception. But if you'll notice, Lou Gehrig held the consecutive game record. It seemed like forever, but it was only 62 years. Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak has lasted 82 years. We haven't had a 400 hitter in the majors since Ted Williams 82 years ago. Or if you're hip, and if you're in this room, you probably are, Artie Wilson hit 400 in 1948 in the Negro American League, I think it was. So maybe it's only been 75 years since the last major league 400 hitter. But in any case, Rapp has held this record, even though it's only been recognized, even though it's still not yet recognized. But at best, it's been 26 months since the Negro Leagues have been accepted as a major league. But that's 94 years ago. All right. 1923, Babe Ruth hits the home run in Yankee Stadium. 1930, Rap Dixon hits the home run by an African-American in Yankee Stadium. I call it the house that Dixon rehabbed. 1932, the great Pittsburgh Crawfords put their first real team together, owned by Gus Greenlee. I believe Page was on the 31 team, but look at these guys that they bring in for 32. That's the manager, Oscar Charleston, with his foot on the bench. And then from right to left, those other 4 players are Judd Wilson, Judy Johnson, Josh Gibson, and then Rap Dixon. Rap is the only one not in the Hall. 1933, this is a photograph from the newspaper, so it's not a good one, but we will see it again in an artist's rendition. But Rap is elected by the fans to the first Negro League All-Star game called the East-West Classic. 1934, and this is the winter in more ways than one of Rap's career, because before he leaves Puerto Rico, and that might have been it, he might have been in Cuba also, this team from Venezuela that he played on, I don't think he ever set foot in Venezuela, but this team won the Caribbean Championship that year. And let's see his teammates. This is Josh Gibson. And Sean, I got to tell you, Josh wouldn't come to play for Concordia if he couldn't bring his seatmate from the ocean liners that they traveled on, Rap Dixon. This is Martin Diego, the great Cuban Hall of Famer. And down here, this guy's not a Hall of Famer, but his son is. This is Louis Aparicio Sr. So you can just tell this is one great team. They win the Caribbean title in 1934. And I didn't mention the reason it's the winter of Rap's career. Before he leaves the winter season, I assume, given his gaudy numbers with Concordia, he couldn't have been hurt then. So he must have got hurt when he was with Concordia, but he hurt his back severely. He only plays about 9 games in 1934 in the Negro Leagues. But what he's important for in 34 is he's the manager of this young man, Leon Day. And anytime you're the first professional manager of someone who goes on to the Hall of Fame, you've done your job. And Leon himself told me at the Pratt Library in Baltimore in the early 90s that Rap was the right man for the job. And he was speaking in his father's eyes because Leon was only 17 or so. And Rap had to convince Leon's dad that he was the right man for the job. Okay, here's Rap's swan song, the 1935 Negro League playoffs. It's the Pittsburgh Crawfords, his old team, versus the New York Cubans. The Cubans had won the second half with Rapp leading the way. The first half Rapp spent with Brooklyn, and he was, like I said, injured. Somehow, with the Cubans, Martin Diego, their manager, brought out the spectacular aspect that was left in Dixon's career. Because here's his statistics for the playoffs. And these five guys here are all Hall of Famers in ability and legends and stories, but only four of them are in Cooperstown. And you can see Rapp, the light green means you led the playoffs. Rapp led over Oscar Charleston, Josh Gibson, sorry, Sean, Cool Papa Bell, and Martin Diego. Rapp led an average on base percentage and OPS, and he was second to Charleston, a little bit ahead of Josh in slugging. Okay, now here we get into legendary. Feel free to ask me anything you want, but I'm going to tell you what I believe. That in 1937, Bell, Gibson, Page, George Scales, Chet Brewer all go south to play for the dictator of the Dominican Republic, and they bring home a championship, much to their deep pleasure and satisfaction. But then they come north, and all but Gibson is suspended from the Negro Leagues. Gibson had arranged with Homestead to be allowed to play there. But Page and Bell, Chet Brewer, they're all suspended. So they tour the country playing Sandlot. Meanwhile, Dixon's in Pittsburgh, batting only 9 times all year. His usefulness on the field is over. But this is what I believe. And again, feel free to ask why in Q&A. The team sought a manager, and while George Scales and Cool Papa Bell do manage the team from time to time, Rapp Dixon is the man who brings them to Denver and manages them to the Denver Post Tournament Championship. Feel free to ask. 1942, Rapp was rather loud in the papers talking about coming integration of the game. And to prove it, in 1942, he takes a Harrisburg Giant, Negro League, although by then they are low level, out of the major leagues, but nonetheless, an all-black team with 4 white players when he comes to Darby, Pennsylvania to play Hilldale. All right. Now, this is what I want to focus on, and I guess I better take a quick look at the time. I got maybe 10 minutes. Statistics, legends, and opinions. The Hall of Fame in 2006 makes clear their opinion. And unfortunately, it was that he didn't quite belong. On the left are the 7 Hall of Famers who are in the Baseball Hall of Fame for outfield play. They then are the 7 greatest Negro League outfielders according to the Hall. However, on the ballot in 2006 were 5 other outfielders. And in my opinion, as I interpret this, they're the next 5. So the Hall of Fame names the 12 best outfielders in their opinion, now 17 years old. I will say this, that there has been another ballot since then, and Vic Harris does appear on it, but he's really there, although I think he is worthy of the Hall as an outfielder. He's not in this class, but as a manager, he should have been put in a couple years ago when they voted. All right, other expert opinions. In 1952, the Pittsburgh Courier named a first and a second team, and some guys, John Holloway, the first I'm aware of, Stephen Green's most recently, and I think Larry Lester has lent his opinion in this regard. That, and of course, I joined. The honor roll is listed in order of merit. It's not just a random or alphabetical list. And feel free to ask about that. I'll defend that in Q&A too. But you can see here, these are the outfielders named to the to those teams back in 1952. And Rapp is the third best in this opinion that aren't in the Hall. Chino Smith goes in second team, Clint Thomas, second team utility, and then you got Rapp and on down, Fats, Jimmy, Spot, etc. In 2018, and I forgot to invite Jay or Bob, but Bob Kendrick announced the Negro League Centennial team in December of 18, leading up to the 2020 100th anniversary. And on that team were 4 of the 32 persons that weren't in the Hall. Since then, Buck O'Neill has been put in the Hall. Bravo. 3 more, though. Pitchers Redding and Donaldson remain outside. And Rapp Dixon is the only position player, and obviously outfielder, named to the Negro League Centennial team, not in the Hall of Fame. Larry Lester organized the Sabre Negro League Committee to rank, not really rank, but name 101 notable Negro Leaguers. And of course, at the front of the line were the 35 players and 2 sports writers that were already in the Hall. Don't tell Bill Dean I said that. But anyway, so what really matters in this poll was how do the non-Negro Leaguers rank? And you can see Dick Lundy was the highest ranking player, Rapp Dixon right on his tail. So this poll, conducted by the Sabre Negro League Committee early in 21, says Rapp Dixon is the most meritorious outfielder not in the Hall. Similarly, Sean, who's our host today, and Gary Gillette, who I'm not sure if he's in the audience, I hope he is, and myself put together a poll called 42 for 21. And what we were trying to do is provide the Hall of Fame with 42 names, meritorious, for consideration in their 2021 vote. Well, we missed the mark there. However, Rapp Dixon topped that poll, right ahead of Dick Redding and John Beckwith and Gus Greenlee. Oh, by the way, not to distract, but Greenlee is my favorite candidate for the Hall who's not in, and Beckwith is my favorite player candidate who's not in. Okay, we're going to close. Who would we want to talk to? Well, in my opinion, I'd like to talk to the first 3 outfielders put into the Hall of Fame. What do they think? Well, those guys are Monty Irvin, who went in 1973, Cool Papa Bell, 1974, and Oscar Charleston, who goes in 1976. Well, in 1996, Monty wrote his autobiography with James Riley. And deep into the book, he lists players position by position in order of his feelings about them. And in the outfield, he names the only 2 outfielders in the Hall other than himself, Oscar Charleston and Cool Papa Bell. His third selection was prescient in that 3 years later, Turkey Stearns goes in. So this gives some validity to Monty's opinion, because he indeed did name Turkey Stearns as a Hall of Famer before the Hall did. His next one is his good friend and contemporaneous ball player, Wild Bill Wright, and then he names Rapp Dixon. So what Monty's saying is Bill Wright should be the first in, and Rapp should be the second. Cool Papa Bell was put in a year after Monty, and he names his team, and you can see he provides some wiggle room. He puts Charlie at first, which isn't a bad pick, but it keeps him out of the outfield, and I guess that let Monty get on the team. Anyway, he names 3 outfielders, Turkey Stearns, again, who would go in 5 years after Cool mentioned it, Monty, who was already in, and Rapp Dixon. And the source for this is a book called The Greatest Team by Donald Dewey and Nick Gossicella. And Dewey told me Bell gave him this information over the telephone. So this was direct from the horse's mouth. Now, the first Hall of Fame outfielder who was not around to accept the glory or to influence the voters, perhaps more importantly, is Oscar Charleston, the greatest of all Negro League players, in my opinion, by that much over Josh Gibson. Charlie names his all-time outfield, and he puts the great Afro-Cuban Martin Diego in left, and another Afro-Cuban, Cristobal Torriente, in right. Now, Diego played a higher percentage of his outfield games in center than Rapp did, and Torriente played more games and a higher percentage than Rapp did. Yet, Charleston names Dixon as his center fielder, his old position. There's one way to interpret this without any exaggeration. What Charleston is saying is Rapp Dixon is the greatest African-American outfielder he ever saw, the other two being Afro-Cuban. And in putting him in center field, in my opinion, he's naming Dixon as the best outfielder he ever saw. And let me back that up a little bit. Charleston comes to Harrisburg in 24, in large part because Struthers paid him well, gave him the managerial range, and also Charleston's wife was from Harrisburg. But Charleston wouldn't have came if he didn't trust the two guys on his flanks, the greatest outfield in segregated history, Fats Jenkins and Rapp Dixon. So that's an instance of Charleston presaging his pick, which he made in 1949 in answer to a question from the Philadelphia Evening Bulletin. And one more point here, and now I'm showing my age, I got to remember. 1934, when Rapp was with Concordia and when he got hurt, the American newspapers didn't know about that. But what we do have recorded in the winter meetings that year, Charleston, with the Crawfords, offered cool Papa Bell straight up for Rapp Dixon. So that gives you Charleston and Greenlee's opinion of Rapp. But even better, and Sean will like this, the Philadelphia Stars, who held the rights at the time, owned by Ed Bolden and managed by Webster McDonald, they turned that down. In other words, they saw Dixon as, they agree that Dixon's better than Bell, but they asked for a young 21-year-old, 22-year-old catcher, Josh Gibson. So that gives you a good idea of where some of the people in the day felt Rapp ranked. Now, here's the three people I just discussed. You can see how Rapp's goes up in the eyes of each of them. We did go over the fact that there's a shortage of Negro League outfielders in the Hall. And now just one more point about research in general and the state of the art. Here's Rapp Dixon's batting average as we know them through trusted sources. He's a .304 hitter in 1990 in the McMillan, and that was largely the work of the Sabre Negro League Committee. In 2006, the same people working, he's a .315 hitter according to the NRA. Seamheads today has him at .325. They count all games against what they call Negro League teams between 1920 and 1948. And then we get to Baseball Reference, and I like their numbers better than the Seamheads, but here's the rub. They only count teams designated by Major League Baseball as Major League. I'm hoping that somewhere between those two numbers, Major League Baseball buys into more than the 7 leagues they see as major at present. Whether they go the whole way to the Seamheads filter, that's over my pay grade. But I just wanted to point out that look how Rapp's batting average, as we find more and more box scores, has been increasing. Time's yours.
Thank you, Ted. I continue to have camera issues, so I'll stay off camera, but we have several questions and comments in the Q&A box while we raise these with Ted, please, you're all welcome to throw your thoughts as well in the Q&A and chat. One, more or less a comment rather than a question from Bob Poet. He references that Calico Joe hit 15 straight in John Grisham's book by that name. So that must have been an important thing, a big number, if you will, to highlight Grisham.
Let me comment. Can I comment on that?
Oh, please jump in.
Because not just Calico Joe, the name is going to escape me now, but the very next month after Rapp got 14 straight hits, a player for the Reading team, I think this is AA level, got 15 straight hits. So the professional record, both in fiction, Calico Joe, and in reality, in minor league baseball, is 15. Rapp held the professional record for less than a month.
Cool, very nice. Bob also weighed in, listening to you think out loud about the 37 team in the Dominican. His comment was, I heard Pancho Cuambre was also on the 37 Dragons, but left the team due to a lack of playing time. Do you recollect that at all?
Well, I don't think he's in the picture, but Rapp and Josh, in fact, this is another good story. It shows you Rapp's fellow travelers. Johnny Mize, now this is before he even played in the majors, but young Johnny Mize was on that team, and he had to report to the Cardinals for spring training. So that's when they reached out to Josh and got Josh and Rapp. And that might have bumped Pancho off the team for all I know. In terms of Cepeda, I don't think he's in the picture either, but I could be corrected on that because I would have mentioned him if I knew he was in the picture with Aparicio's father. But yes, the Concordia team was loaded for several years, and in '34 they win the Caribbean Championship. It was called the Torrio Cup. So he wasn't influential in that.
Ted, Paul's question regarding how you feel about Hurley McNair, I think after you respond to that, really begs maybe a larger one. I think we could do with you coming up with a list. We'll have the Ted Knorr list of those worthy for the Hall. You've spoken about the disproportionateness with respect to the players in the Hall. But start with Hurley, and then maybe a couple of other no-brainers. You mentioned Gus, obviously, as well.
Well, I hope Paul noticed, Hurley is one of the players who had a higher than Sam Rice, and I think he might have the highest of that quintet. I could be, it's just my memory. But Hurley McNair is one of the players active in 1925 who should have been in that list. Hurley McNair's career begins when he's at a pretty good age. Kevin Johnson would be my source for that. So McNair is actually, and I got to admit this since Paul asked, I think he's slightly more meritorious. Don't tell anybody I said this, than Rapp. Hurley McNair is my favorite outfield candidate for the Hall. What the next question is about, and I'm glad this is asked. 1937, there's no evidence, real evidence that Rapp managed that team. Here's why I believe it. Dr. Leighton Ravel told me in the files of Jay Sanford. Now, Sanford is the expert on the Denver Post tournament. He has, and Jay hasn't been able to find it for me. I guess we're all getting to be a certain age, as I've demonstrated several times in this talk. But Jay hasn't found it. He doesn't deny it. But the application to participate in the 1937 tournament is signed by Rapp Dixon as manager. Now, there's a backstory there that I'm not going to get into. But that's one piece of evidence. That's Dr. Ravel saw it. It's signed by Rapp. But here's a better one. John Hallway, in one of his early books, interviews Cool Papa Bell. And Cool Papa Bell tells a story that's oft repeated. I'm sure some of us are familiar, where he slides into third base, spikes high, and Bob Hale, a former major leaguer, is playing third, and I don't think he eats the spikes, but his pants are torn, and a fight ensues. And there's a big pile up. And who comes, according to Cool now, who comes to his rescue? But Rap Dixon. Now, that can only mean that Dixon was in that third base coaching box. At least, I mean, I don't know that. I'm interpreting, but he beats every other player, and Rap pulls him out of harm's way. And that's the end of that story. Also, in evidence, box scores of the team, Rap appears in several games, including the championship game, batting. I don't know if he leads off, but he gets a first inning at bat, and then he's out. That doesn't mean he managed. So none of my proof, the reason why I believe it, clearly, Bill, I want to. However, there is, why he's on that team when he was 1 for 9 in the league that year, his skills were gone. Why the manager would put him in the game, I don't know. Third base coaching box is a place where Negro League managers often were. And then finally, I have Dr. Ravel's word. So when I add all them, plus what my desire, I can't deny that. That's why I think that. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, the questions keep coming. Thank you. Another one from William from Bill Clark. You see Rap actually getting into the Hall at some point?
Well, let me give you my optimistic answer, because they're going to vote again in December of 24. If they vote under the current rules, no Negro Leaguer is probably going to get in, because the ballot, as it currently stands, includes players the whole way up to 1980. In other words, Dick Allen, who got robbed last time, may be competing against Negro Leaguers. And the voters, by definition, they're going to be 72 and under. Let me make that 74 and under in case the Hall is feeling very good about Ted Knorr. But because by December 24, I'll be 73. But to have them compete, they had to compete against 1950 and earlier 2 years ago. But to have them compete now against through 1980 is almost laughable. And then the voting panel, which again, the Hall's done great things. They had five Negro League experts among the, I think it was 16 voters. They need to have a separate panel. These are players that were punished by segregation. And now you're going to punish them by integration? Something's wrong with that picture. There needs to be a panel of voters that know what they're talking about from 1 to 16. And there needs to be a ballot, just like 2006, with an up or down vote, 75% not limited by, these guys haven't been really on the ballot, and now you're being told how many of them you can vote for. So that's my short answer. I think that's going to happen. I believe the Hall of Fame will do the right thing.
Thank you, Ted. Maybe that's a great way to end, but I want to go to Samantha Dorm's comment, maybe bringing you in, Sean, as we begin to close things out. Samantha raises a great point. Her comment, very much appreciative of the great information that's provided, is what are the best ways to share with young people so that these stories aren't lost? Sean, want to jump in your thoughts?
I'm gonna defer entirely to Sean, because Sean has a new organization that's built to do that, and I have already volunteered to whatever they want me to do.
Well, I'm sorry, Tom. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, this is Samantha, who's nicely weighed into the Q&A. She's interested in what are the best ways to share with young people so that these stories aren't lost. You're on mute, Sean.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my computer went out. This is, I'm sorry, repeat the question. I apologize, everybody.
What are the best ways to share with young people these kinds of stories, events like Ted's discussion today, so that they're not lost?
Yeah, great question, Samantha. I run the Josh Gibson Foundation here in Pittsburgh, and we deal with over 300 inner city youth through our programs. We're big on awareness of programs like this. I mean, of course, we would love to get these type of programs within the school. As Ted and Tom know, just this month alone, I probably spoke at least at 12 different schools. It seems like everybody want to cram in this history in 28 days. And I feel like this is a history that should be told all year round. So to get these more, more publicized with youth, I think it should be taught all year round, not just in February. And so that's one of my main concerns right now, just pushing it 365 days a year instead of 28 days. But you're totally right. There's other ways too. I mean, us having these webinars, maybe we do a session where we do it just for youth. Most of our webinars are done for adults. We can do in a session that's for the schools or things like that. So those are just some of the ideas that we're doing. But if you have any ideas, please share them with us, and we'll be happy to look at your ideas as well.
And Ted,
and one other question real quick. And I thought, Ted, is Samantha, you said she's with the graveyard cemetery?
Yes. Lebanon Cemetery in York. She works closely with Caleb Jackson, who both you guys know, and others on a statewide basis.
So Samantha, one also want to talk to you about, and we'll have a website up next month. We started a grave marker project here in Pittsburgh. What that means is that there's over 33 Negro League baseball players in Western Pennsylvania that have unmarked graves. And our foundation has made a big initiative to make sure that we mark those graves. And we're actually going to mark about 5 or 6 this year. So I'd love to tell you more about that project as well. Our website will be up next month, but we do have a grave marker project that we are going to be marking over 33 unmarked graves of Negro League baseball players here in Western Pennsylvania.
Bravo.
Yeah. So is any other questions before we wrap up, Tom?
Yeah, just a couple more things as we get to the close. One is
Sure.
Paul Julian's comment. As a teacher, I tell the young stories and facts about the men in the Negro major leagues. So South Side Chicago kids know as well. Thank you. Shout out to the South Side. My wife would be appreciative of that. And then finally, we'll give Bob Poet the last word here. What do we hear about Rap's streak record on live broadcast on MLB? Anything? For instance, on opening day, I always listen for mention of Leon Day's no-hitter and have never heard of an announcer mention Day along with Bob Feller. Have you? And I'll just weigh in real quick before you take this one, Ted. I know in talking with Larry Lester, this is a big deal to him as well. And as the stats get integrated and represented fully in reaching out with MLB, these stories are equally important. So that they infuse the conversations for television journalists, correspondents, the broadcasters of games. I want to give a shout out to the Los Angeles Angels when Shohei Ohtani was credited for his double duty work, and Babe Ruth was often cited as the last one to have done that. The Angels very graciously said there was this gentleman by the name of Willie Joe Rogan who needs attention as well. Unfortunately, this seems to remain the exception rather than rule that these stories infuse the dialogue. Ed, I'll give you the last on that.
Well, and on the specific point, I don't have much to say, except I love Adam and Kevin are still here. And I know it's not fair to them, but and Adam's going to be speaking here, I think, in several months. So that's a topic we can revisit, the statistics, because to the best of my knowledge, they're not incorporated yet. Baseball Reference has done a marvelous job putting the stats up as they would look, CMED stats, but filtered to the major league definition. And I'm looking forward to Adam's talk. I think he's after Lisa in our order. And you know, that subject will come up again. If they want to say something now, we can promote them. Again, it's not fair, but as we're running out of time, but they could both be promoted to be panelists. There's Kevin. And
I can't say a lot, but I because MLB would not like it, but I'll say that it looks promising that this may be the year that MLB has some additional announcements.
Great.
Thank you, Kevin.
Adam, anything?
Yeah, I mean,
Confidentiality makes it difficult to.
Yeah, he could talk about it. And he's his next speaker in June.
There you go. Sorry, fellas, didn't mean to put you on the spot.
All right. Any other questions, Tom?
That's all we got. I did post in the chat the connection to the Josh Gibson Foundation website, so you can find the link to register for Lisa Alexander's webinar in April. So look for that. She'll do a nice sort of a preview of the Malloy, but obviously be a wealth of information more generally, and a great person to have on the call with us. That's all I got, Sean. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, Ted, as always, great job.
Thank you.
Great presentation. Thank you again. And again, everybody who joined us today, thank you for joining us. And for our regulars, thank you for always being a part of this webinar series. As Tom just mentioned, our next one will be April 15th with Lisa Alexander. You can go to our website, which is joshgibson.org, and go to the events tab to register for that one. And we look forward to having Lisa's presentation in April. And then after that, as we mentioned, Adam will be in June. So please register for those next ones coming up. Adam's link will be up next week or sometime this week. Lisa's is up right now to register, but feel free to come on and join us. And also too, one of the things that we definitely want to do is spread the word on these webinars. So if there's anybody you think will be interested, whether they're youth or adults, please share the link. Please have them reach out to one of us to get the information. We definitely bring more awareness to these webinars, and any help that you can provide with that, we greatly appreciate it. And with that being said, we're going to close today. I want to thank everybody again. Everybody, enjoy your weekend. Hopefully wherever you're at, it's not snowing, and you enjoy your day. And we'll see you guys and everybody in April. So thank you.